All right, update on the starter. Oh yeah, that's looking good. Guys, this one is good. Oh my gosh, we killed it. Fresh out of the oven, looks amazing. Look at that crumb. So good. So something very unfortunate happened a few months ago. I started sourdough baking and I baked sourdough for probably like 2 or 3 months. I really loved doing it, but it just got to the point where I was making too much of it that we couldn't eat it. So then I ended up throwing it away, and it is like a longer process. One thing you can do when you are not actively baking with your sourdough starter is leave it in the fridge so you don't have to feed it every single day. So I was doing that for a little bit, and I just kept taking it in and out of the fridge without like properly feeding it or like letting it get to room temperature and then throwing it back in the fridge. I was just traveling a lot. It was just getting a little chaotic, and I ended up killing my starter. But we're going to take that as a learning lesson, and now I'm going to restart my starter from the very beginning with you guys on YouTube for anyone who wants to know. So this is the exact same sourdough starter that I used last time I started sourdough. I posted a TikTok about it. It hit like 1 million views. It went pretty crazy. So hopefully this video is helpful. We'll go in detail from start to finish. These first few days are going to be very quick because there's not really much to it. This is the sourdough starter that I use. It's from the Souther Sourdough Co. This is hers, Eve. I'm going to link her TikTok in the description below too, because she just knows everything about sourdough. And this is her sourdough starter that she sells, and her like recipe and just like how to get started. So I want to be respectful of the fact that she's another content creator, that she sells this information. So I'm not going to go into like too much detail on like the actual recipe that she uses, but I'll also make sure to link the one that I bought from her down below. Some people were mad at me on TikTok for not sharing the actual recipe, but if she's selling it for like $5, then I'm not just going to go blast it on the internet for everyone to just like steal. That's not my place. But there are a bunch of sourdough recipes you can use online, trial and error. Anyways, that's my little disclaimer. Let's get started on day 1. It says put 1 full packet of the dehydrated starter in a clean glass jar, add 3 full tablespoons of room temperature water, let it sit for an hour. After the hour, stir in 2 tablespoons of unbleached bread flour. So let's start on day 1. We're going to add this packet to a little mason jar, and then we're going to add 3 tablespoons of room temperature water, and then we'll stir it up and come back in an hour to add the flour. All right, we got my tiny little mason jar. Opening up the starter. Hopefully this works. I bought this starter a long time ago. I actually bought 2 of them at the same time in case I messed up the first recipe. But I don't think this can go bad since it's dehydrated, but maybe. 3 tablespoons. Stirring it up, and then in an hour I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of unbleached bread flour. It says to cover it loosely, and this works for me. Just don't screw on the mason jar lid and just like set it on there. So I'll come back in an hour to add the flour, and then also see you guys in 24 hours. All right, it's the next day, and this is why I'm not very good at sourdough, because I should have fed this maybe 4 or 5 hours ago. Completely forgot until I was scrolling on TikTok and saw something about sourdough. And I was like, guys, I literally need to feed this. So we're doing 2 tablespoons of flour, 2 tablespoons-ish, maybe a little less, of room temperature water, and that's all for today. Since I've been doing this for a little bit, I can kind of go off of like the consistency. I don't need to be like super exact with the measurements. You just want something really like thick pancake batter. I'm literally just eyeballing it with my spoon because I've done this plenty of times before. The instructions are pretty freaking accurate though, but sometimes it's a little bit easier to just go off of like eyeballing it, because then you're not like doing more dirty dishes. It's a little bit quicker. I don't know if you can see, but I think this is a little bit too runny, so I'm gonna add just a little bit more flour. That's a little bit better, a little bit thicker. See you guys tomorrow for the same routine. Like I said, these next few days are gonna go by pretty quickly because we're just reactivating the starter and we're not actually like making the sourdough bread. But I will see you tomorrow. It's going to be the exact same thing, just a little bit of flour and a little bit of water. All right, day 3, I am not forgetting today. Same thing as yesterday, about 2 tablespoons of flour and then 1.5 tablespoons to 2 tablespoons of water. Not seeing any growth yet, but I think that's totally fine. We are getting some air bubbles, which is great. Also, I didn't realize that there's like a whole starter kit for this girl's like sourdough starter that she came out with like recently. So I don't have it because that little like starter packet I used, I got forever ago. All right, we got that same thick pancake batter consistency again. So I think we're good, and I will see you guys tomorrow. All right, we're back. It rose a tiny bit and then it came back down. So it's time for another feeding. So today's the day when we're doing like a bigger feed, like an actual like half cup of flour and then a 1/4 cup of room temperature water. I think we can still fit it in this glass. And then I think tomorrow we'll move it to a bigger jar. Don't put it so high. Ugh. 1/4 cup, and then a 1/4 cup of water. Give it a little stir. See, sourdough is just timely. I don't necessarily think it's hard. Once you figure it out, you only need to like put in a few minutes of time, but it's just like a multiple day thing, which makes it a little difficult to like schedule into your day. But like this feeding is only taking me 2 minutes and then I'm done for the next 24 hours. Making sure there's no extra like flour clumps, especially on the bottom of the jar. I think we got it all. Now I'm gonna scrape down the sides as well. Little consistency check. This one is very, very thick, but I think it kind of needs to be pretty thick once you actually want it to start like growing and doubling, and that's where we're at. Also, if you're new to sourdough, always rinse whatever like utensils you use, because if it hardens, it's like so hard to wash off. Now I'm moving the rubber band up and hopefully it grows. We'll do a little check-in if it does. I'll check it in like 4 to 6 hours just in case. If not, I'll see you guys tomorrow. All right, a little bit of an update. You can see, maybe. Can you see that it's risen quite a bit so far? This has only been like 3 hours. Also, if you live in a colder climate or you keep your house really cold, I suggest putting this somewhere decently warm. Since it's the summer in Florida, I can just leave it on my counter. But during the winter months, I will like put it right next to my oven while I'm cooking dinner. You don't want to like burn it by any means or like get too much heat, but the warmer it is, the quicker the process will happen. So just wanted to show you guys the rise. We'll be back tomorrow. All right, update on the starter. This is very, I mean, it's not the best because it's hard to clean, but this is good news. It really rose, it doubled in size. That is like the best news ever. That means we can start baking with it next time we feed it, and we'll definitely go to a bigger jar. This is why you don't want to keep the lid on it, because literally the glass would have broke probably. So next time I feed it, we will be pouring it into another jar, but hopefully it's on its way down. Yay! That's a good sign. A messy sign, but a good sign. Alrighty, it's baking day. It is currently 9 a.m. I'm gonna do this part with timestamps just so you guys understand like how many hours it takes to do like the full process, but really the recipe is so simple. It's starter, flour, water, salt. That's all you need. Just like the time is very intimidating. So like I said, it's 9 a.m. I'm transferring it to a bigger container just so it has room to grow and we don't get that overflow again, especially because we're adding more flour and more water. And then before I do a feed before baking, I just make sure to like time it out in my head. Sometimes I'll leave like a little alarm in my phone so I don't forget, because from here you do need to be like pretty particular on the like rest of baking. So I'm going to add a 1/2 cup of flour. That's 1/4 and the other 1/4. Then I'm gonna do 1/4 cup of water and then look at the consistency and see if we need either more water or more flour. This is when I like to use this little like bread scraper whisk situation. Everything that I'm using, I have an Amazon storefront link that's called like sourdough essentials, like down to the bowls and the baggies that I use and the liners. So I'll make sure to have that in the description below. All right, so it's definitely looking too thick. See how it's like a little bit chunky still? I want it to be a little more smooth. I still want it to be thick, but smooth. Maybe like a tablespoon. Making sure to get like all of the base and so there's no like pockets of raw flour. Still a little too thick. I got it smoother, but still needs probably another tablespoon. That's what we're looking for. Honestly, I could probably use a little bit more water, but I think I'm just gonna leave it. I don't know. So scraping down the sides, and I'm gonna move that little rubber band so I can see where we're at. So moving that rubber band down. And then with this jar, I don't really close it. Sometimes I'll use a rubber band to like leave it lightly closed just for like bugs and stuff, just to keep it sanitary, but I could have left it like this if there were no bugs in my house. So from here, the timer starts. It's 9:15 and I wanna be back in the 4 to 6 hour mark. We are going to the beach, so it'll probably be closer to the 6 hour mark. But you want to catch the starter at its peak rise, and that's normally 4 to 6 hours. It'll rise as much as it can, and then it'll go back down. But when you're baking bread, you want to grab the starter when it's at its peak. So see you guys in 4 to 6 hours. All right, we're back from the beach. Look how much my starter grew. The rubber band is where I left you guys, and it's definitely doubled. It has come down a little bit, so hopefully I'm not too late. It probably would have been better if I did this maybe an hour ago, but we just got back and I'm not even showered yet. But that's okay. Let's start our dough. I'm so excited. This part really does not take that long either. One thing you'll definitely need to get as you start your sourdough journey is a kitchen scale, but you can find them on Amazon for like $10, Target same day delivery. All right, I want you guys to be able to see my table and what I'm doing. So I have my kitchen scale, I have the bowl that I'm going to do my dough in. So I'm turning on the scale and then you zero it out so it doesn't like weigh the weight of the bowl. There's tons of different sourdough recipes. You can find a lot on Pinterest, on TikTok. I use the Souther Sourdough Co. So I'll make sure to link her like website if you want to buy this exact recipe. The only reason I'm not putting it in the caption or like sharing it with you guys is I just want to respect the creator. If she wants to charge someone for that recipe, then she can charge it. I'm not going to go and like say her recipe online. I think it's 100% worth it to buy. It's just like a quick little PDF download. But if you don't want to buy it, there's plenty of other options. Wait, my scale. Oh, phew. I didn't have it on grams and I thought it was gonna like freak out on me, but we're good. Also, if you wanna do a double batch, this is where you start. You can just do it all in one bowl. Just make sure your bowl is big enough. Got a little too much, so I'm scraping some out. Whenever I go in with like a new ingredient, I'll zero out the scale. So we're back to zero. Now I'm adding my water. Next item I'm using is a bread whisk. Again, you don't need it, but it is something that definitely helps. So if you're just starting, don't worry about it, but if you do end up loving sourdough, I do recommend this, and it's another super affordable like kitchen tool. So I'm gonna mix up the starter and the water until it gets to like a milky consistency. I just want it like fully mixed up, fully dissolved. Any sourdough recipe you find will work, but I do recommend finding someone who lives in the same state as you because the climate and the temperature really does matter. I tried using like Ballerina Farms recipe the other day. Literally did not work for me at all. And I do recommend going with a recipe that takes like 48 hours because you really are able to get like a good amount of like air and a fluffy sourdough bread. I've tried a few other recipes that are like a 24-hour turnaround time and it's just not as good. So after that, I zeroed out my scale, adding in my flour. Oops, accidentally added in my tablespoon scoop. The flour that I like to use is the King Arthur's unbleached bread flour. I like bread flour because it's just like a higher protein content, so I feel like the protein in the starter just mix a lot better, and I love the King Arthur brand. And then as far as water goes, some people will tell you to use like filtered water and like room temperature water, so some people will just like buy a gallon of filtered water and like leave it in their pantry. I did that at first, and then I slowly started just using like room temperature tap water, and it does just fine for me. So find out what works for you. Sourdough is very different depending on the water, the flour, the temperature of your house. All right, I need a little bit more. It is crazy to me that sourdough bread is literally starter, which is made from flour and water, then more flour and water and salt. That's literally all it is. And go slow when you're adding these ingredients because you can always add more, but it's kind of hard to take stuff out. You want to be as exact as you can. And then salt. And now I'm gonna mix this up again with my little bread whisk and I will show you what it looks like. So this is what it looks like as I'm mixing. You want it to be very uniform, but it's gonna be like a shaggy dough is what it's called. That's kind of like the shagginess you'll want. All right, this is what it's looking like. I would say this is a little bit drier than normal, so I might add like the teeniest splash of water, but this is what you want your shaggy dough to look like. I'm gonna mix it just a little bit more to see if we can incorporate the flour before adding more water because I know I added enough. I'm literally adding like the tiniest splash. You can also totally use your hands for this, but I mean, I kind of use a mix of both. I mix it with this little bread whisk. Any that's left over, just use my hands and put it back on the dough. All right, so from here, I'm going to just cover it with a towel and let it sit for 1 hour, and then we're going to come back and do stretch and folds for the next 2 hours every 30 minutes, so 4 sets of stretch and folds. So once you make your dough, make sure you're home for like the next 3 hours. You don't need to be super exact with it, but it's just easier for me to remember it. Just my normal everyday kitchen towel. I'm gonna go shower and we'll be back in an hour. All right, fresh out of the shower. It's been an hour. Ooh, that rhymed. So we have our dough here. It's been rising for about an hour now. So now we're gonna do this thing called stretch and folds. Just pretend that your dough has 4 sides to it and you're going to pull it up and fold it into itself on each side. I hope that makes sense, but those are called stretch and folds. It's just gonna get air into the dough, really help it rise. And yeah, if it gets really sticky, you can put like cold water on your hands, it helps. So I'm gonna do that. Pull it up, fold it in. Turn it a quarter, grab under, pull it up, fold it in. So that was stretch and fold number 1, and you're going to do this 3 more times. So you're gonna do it 4 times. The total will be like 2 hours plus the hour before you're sitting. Hopefully that made sense. So you'll have it sit for 1 hour, stretch and fold, 30 minutes, stretch and fold, 30 minutes, stretch and fold, 30 minutes, stretch and fold, and then we'll continue from there. So I'll be back in 30 minutes. I probably won't talk, but I'll show you guys. All right, I'm getting a little too sleepy, so I'm gonna do 1 more set of stretch and fold. So I'm not gonna do all 4, which hopefully will be just fine, and I think it should be. This is what it looks like. It's a little bit more smooth now. So I'm going to do the final set of stretch and folds, and then we're going to let it rise overnight on the counter. As you do this, the dough will get like less and less stretchy, which is totally normal. So like I said, I should probably do 1 more set of stretch and folds, but I'm really tired. So I'm gonna leave it at this 3rd one. If I'm still awake in 30 minutes, I'll do another one. Then I'm just going to set this aside and leave it somewhere kind of warm-ish so it can rise. We want it to double overnight, like double in size overnight. Good morning. It is 9 a.m. Let's check on this bread. Oh, I'm so tired. I literally just woke up and put on a workout set. All right. Oh yeah, that's looking good. Definitely rose quite a bit. I'm sad that there's some of these like little crusty pieces. That's just kind of because of like the air and stuff, but that'll be totally fine. Now for the fun part. This is when you actually get to shape the bread. So I'm gonna clean off my surface right here, make sure it's all clean. And then this is when you would add any flavors if you wanna do like a sweet one or a savory one. I've done so many different like mix-ins, but the fun thing is it always uses the same recipe. So you could make like a double batch of just the dough, and then you can do one like cheddar jalapeno, and then you can do one cinnamon sugar or chocolate chip or whatever sounds good. There's not like a new recipe for a new flavor. You just like add in the mix-ins. The sourdough shouldn't be super sticky, but this is rice flour. That was another little hack that this Souther Sourdough Co girly like talked about. Is she likes using rice flour when she's doing the actual like forming of the like dough. It's just basically like a powdery flour, so it's just a lot easier to work with. There's not actually any gluten in rice flour, so it doesn't like react weird with the dough. So we're just going to flip it over. You kind of want gravity to take it away on this one. I do have this little scraper, and sometimes I'll just like take it off from the edge. There we are. And it should just fully pull away from the bowl. Perfect. Clean bowl. I don't normally do this, but I think I'm going to cut off some of these, like some of the pieces that seem to have gotten like a little too much air. I just don't want any like crusty pieces, and there's not a ton, but I'm like mixing it in my dough. I don't know, not my fave. All right, now for shaping the dough, you just want to kind of like grab it and pull it out. You don't want to stretch it. You don't want to like roll it too much. You just want to pick it up and make it a big rectangle. So it's all flat for the most part, and my hands are like perfectly dry. Like that's how you know your dough is ready. If it's too sticky, that means you probably like left it overnight a little bit too long, and it's just like a waiting game. You just have to kind of like make a few batches to see what works for you. So like I said, this is when you would add in mix-in. So I typically lay it out like this, and then I would cut up my cheese, cut up my jalapeno, sprinkle it on in there, and then I would still do this same fold. I don't know what this is called. If I look it up, I'll put it on the name. It's kind of like a burrito fold, but you want to like put both of the outsides into the middle, and then I just like roll it up like a little burrito dough, and then you want to make sure all of the seams are on the bottom. And then we're going to put it in here. I'm going to put a little bit of rice flour in here as well, just because it's going in the fridge for a few hours and I don't want it to get too sticky. So you're going to pull it in thirds and do a little fold. 1/3 if you wanted to add more like toppings here, you could. 1/3, add more toppings if you want. And then this is when I like will take the bottom edges and just roll it in and try to get all of this seam to like not show, because then you'll have like a weird crust while baking. So while I roll, I kind of just like take the sides in as well and make it a little bit more rounded than just like rolling like a burrito. Now you have your dough nice and tight, but we still have these sides that need a little bit of help. So I just like to take my hand and like, it's so hard to explain, but it works. You just like take it, and if you pull it towards you, the top of the dough is going to kind of tighten and get rid of those like side seams. So just do that a few times. If you have a filling that's super tiny, this is sometimes a process I skip because I don't want it to like fall out, but that's pretty good. We got a nice tight ball. Gonna throw it over into this. You don't need one of these. I like it because I do bake sourdough a decent amount, but now I'm just going to pinch any openings from that bottom. When I end up cooking the dough, this will be the bottom, so that's just why I'm pinching it, but it doesn't need to be perfect. The tight surface is on the bottom here, and we'll flip it back into the pan. But this is where you just really wanna make sure all of your toppings are sealed in. You can also just put this in any bowl of this size. It doesn't need to be this specific thing, but again, got it on Amazon. And same with these little covers, got on Amazon. So I'm going to let this sit in my fridge for like 4 to 6 hours, even longer is good. I'm going to a workout class, but then I'm going out of town. So I'm just gonna leave this in for now until I get back while I'm packing up, and then we will bake it. All right. Ooh, just got back from my workout. We're gonna preheat the oven and put the Dutch ovens in there. You want to preheat the Dutch ovens for like 45 minutes to an hour. 30 minutes would be fine, but like you want your Dutch ovens pretty hot. So turning the oven on to 450 and then throwing the Dutch ovens in there as well. I have this red Dutch oven that Sydney gave me when we moved into the house in Tampa. I really love this one. Then I also have this white one that's really cute because the bottom is imprinted and says made with love. So I think we're just gonna do this one today so I can link it for you guys. Alrighty, so 450, and then I'm going to let it preheat for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and then we will pull out the dough from the fridge and get to scoring it and putting it in the Dutch oven, and we're finally baking. All right, officially bread time. The Dutch oven's still in there, but I have these hot pads. I have my little like hand hot pads, and now it's time to shape the dough really quickly before we put it in the oven. Taking it out of the fridge. It did rise a little bit more, looking good. Now I have a bunch of these like brown sheets just because it makes it a lot easier to clean the Dutch oven, and Dutch ovens are just hard to clean. Let me throw away my lunch. So I do like to use these inside of the Dutch ovens, especially if you're doing like a cinnamon sugar or anything with sugar, because it does like get kind of wet and melty while you're doing this whole process. So back with the rice flour. Ow, that hit me. Just gonna put a little bit right here on the bottom, not much, and then flip this onto the sheet. And we got our beautiful little loaf right here. A little bit more rice flour on top, and I like to just like rub it in. Mainly this flour is for design, like when you're scoring it, it just looks really pretty. Doesn't really do anything to the actual like flavor or baking of the dough. Now I have my little bread scorer. I do recommend getting this because it works so freaking well compared to like other like cutting tools, and it's really, really cheap, but you don't have to have one. This one's from Amazon. Tighten it, comes with a few different blades, and you can just score it however you feel is pretty. The sourdough is gonna rise either way, and it needs a place for like air to escape, so that's kind of why you're doing this. So you just like give it a space instead of it like cracking in random spots. You can kind of make it crack in beautiful spots. So I'm gonna do a pretty deep score. That's all you need, and then you can do like little light pretty ones. So I'm gonna make this look like a little wheat stock. I'm just gonna do like a little plus sign on this side right here for fun. I don't really know why. Maybe like this is all just for design. So we have our deep score right here with these cute little designs, the plus sign, these little scores, and now it's going in the Dutch oven. So this is when this little like sheet paper comes in handy, putting it in there. Now, since I wasn't able to leave it in the fridge as long as I liked, I'm gonna put a little bit of ice cubes underneath the paper here, just because it really helps add some steam to it, but you don't wanna add too many because sometimes the ice can like have a bad reaction with the actual like pot itself. So just 2 little cubes, 1 on each side, putting the lid back on and going in the oven. So I'm going to let that bake for 25 minutes with the lid on, and then I'm going to take the lid off and do another like 15 to 20 minutes, just making sure it doesn't get like too crispy on top. Set a timer for 25 minutes. So now I'm just gonna hang out around the house, get ready for a little birthday dinner, and see you guys in 25 minutes when I take the lid off. Ooh, you guys, look at that rise. I'm so excited. Now I'm going to put it in for just like 20 more minutes. All right, final reveal. Gotta hurry before my camera dies. Yum, yum, yum. Guys, this one is good. Oh my gosh, we killed it. Absolutely have to take a picture. Fresh out of the oven, looks amazing. I'm honestly surprised it turned out this good, just for being my first sourdough loaf back for a while. Now I'm going to put it on this little cooling rack. And of course everyone wants to like cut into their fresh bread right when it's done so the butter melts and everything, but with sourdough bread, if you cut into it and like the heat escapes really fast, it can collapse a little bit. So I do not recommend cutting into it. Some people say an hour, most people say an hour. I am impatient and cannot wait that long. Like this just took me multiple days. I will be eating it pretty soon. So I'm going to set this off over here to cool. I'm going to do some cleanup, pack up my car to head to Orlando, and I'm only gonna give it 30 minutes and then we're going to taste it together and call it a day. But I'm very, very happy with it. Very, very hot, very, very hot. That's okay. I just want to go over some like frequently asked questions because I had so many questions when I started, and if you guys have any questions, ask me down below. So a lot of people ask like, what do you do with your starter if you want to go out of town? Just like a ton of questions about starter. So I'm going to just like, I'm gonna pull up my old TikToks of me making sourdough and I will have those linked too. I have like a whole like playlist on my TikTok, but there's so many questions about sourdough I need to know the answers to, and now I feel like I know a little bit better. One huge question is like, what do you do with your sourdough starter? Do you have to make bread every single day? Like, how do you take care of it if you need to feed it every day? So I didn't feed it yet this morning because we pulled from it last night, or like yesterday late afternoon. So I'm going to feed my starter today. Now, since I pulled out 100 grams of starter yesterday, I'm not too worried about it like overflowing. So I'm not going to discard any. You'll hear a lot about sourdough discard and sourdough discard recipes. The whole reason people discard their sourdough is because they don't want to make bread that day, or they have too much starter that if they were to feed it and it were to rise, it would like explode out of the pan. So a lot of people will discard half of it before they feed it, so you don't have too much sourdough starter. You don't have to do that. If you wanted to feed your sourdough every day and move it to a bigger jar and a bigger jar and a bigger jar and a bigger jar, you totally can. Or if you want to bake with it every day, you don't really need to discard either. It's just because you simply do not need that much starter. I feel like some people are going to have questions on how to do this gluten-free. I know a lot of people that are gluten sensitive can tolerate like sourdough bread because it's naturally fermented and it doesn't have like the whole like yeast process in it. But like my sister, she's like fully gluten-free. She probably is like, what's it called? When you literally can't have it, like you can't even have like cross-contamination. Oh, celiac. She cannot have this because there's actual flour in it. But I know there are a ton of people that, you know, make the starter with like gluten-free flour. So you would just need to find either a gluten-free starter to buy online or a recipe to start your own starter at home with gluten-free flour. So I do want to do that because I actually have a lot of friends and family that are gluten-free and I love baking. So I want to try that out. So every day from here on out, if my starter's on the counter, I'm going to feed it a half cup of flour and about a quarter cup of water, and then look at the consistency and maybe add just a little bit more water. In my experience, you can feed it as much flour and water as you want as long as the consistency is okay. I mean, I wouldn't like fill it all the way up to the top with flour because you don't have like enough starter to like, I don't know, like activate it. I am not using any of the correct terminology, okay? This is very basic sourdough knowledge. I don't know that much, okay? Don't hold me accountable if I say anything wrong. So Brooke, what do you do if you're going out of town or you don't want to make sourdough this week? Like, what if I have too much? So you can put your sourdough starter in the fridge for, I would probably say, a week to a week and a half safely, like with no problems. You'll feed it and you'll put it in the fridge and you'll be good to take it out, bring it back to room temperature when you're done with your little vacation. And then once it's at room temp, you can feed it again and then just like leave it out on the counter and let it do its thing. Honestly, I think you could really go like 3 weeks in the fridge. So whatever your vacation is, I wouldn't worry about it. Just make sure to feed it and then put it in the fridge. Eventually you'll get to the point where you know what the consistency of your starter needs to be, so you won't like measure it out every time. If you want to be super exact, use that kitchen scale. I feel like I need a little bit more water. Another thing I would recommend doing if you don't want to like buy a dehydrated starter or start from scratch is just ask people in your neighborhood or someone that you know that makes sourdough bread if you can just have some of their starter, because you could literally feed it and start making your own bread bread that night. That's something I would have totally done if I knew the people in my neighborhood. I actually have seen people in like my neighborhood group Facebook be like, does anyone have an active starter? I've gotten started from my friends before who bake sourdough. So you don't have to buy a starter. You can literally take starter from anyone. Like if you were at my house and you wanted some of this, I could just give you some of this right now and put it in a new jar and you'd be good to go as well. So I just fed my starter, but I'm going out of town in 2 days. I don't plan on making another loaf, so I'm just going to leave that in there. And when I get back on the 25th, I'm gonna pull it out, leave it for like 4 to 6 hours, feed it, and then if I need to go again, I will put it back in the fridge. Once it's, you know, like fully like done one cycle. Hopefully that made sense. That's how I think I killed it, was I took it out of the fridge, I fed it before it was at room temp, and then I just put it back in the fridge. So it didn't like fully have the starter. The whole reason you put it in the fridge is because the starter really only works in warm temperatures. So the best way I can explain it is like, you know how we're feeding it and then you give it 4 to 6 hours to fully rise and then you want to take it from the top? That's because it's at, you know, 70 degrees, 75 degrees, depending on what you keep your house at. But I'm putting it in 30 degrees. So it rising is going to take so long, and that's why it's totally okay to stick it in the fridge. So that's what I'm going to do. Everyone say goodbye to the starter and pray that it lasts until we get back. So some of my favorite mix-ins, I like to do pesto and Parmesan. That's my #1 favorite. If anyone wants like a flavored savory sourdough bread, that's the flavor that I make them. Dallin really likes lemon blueberry. I really love cinnamon sugar. You can just add chocolate chips to it. I really want to do like a white chocolate raspberry. I think that would be really good. I have sun-dried tomatoes and then I'll add some type of cheese with that. You could do like a green chili, cheddar or something. Anything you want. If you want to start off with a mix-in, go ahead. I don't think it makes it that much more difficult. You might just have some like poking through or some like falling over, but that's why we have those little like brown liners on the Dutch oven. But don't be intimidated by adding mix-ins into your sourdough. There are some like chocolate sourdough recipes or other things like that where like the actual dough itself is changed, but I haven't even tried any of those myself yet. My favorite way to eat the sourdough bread, avocado toast. I love doing honey butter on it if I just make a plain loaf and I want to do both sour and savory like as I'm eating it. Yeah, avocado toast is my favorite. Just plain butter, honey butter. Love making a sandwich with it. Love making French toast with it. Love like putting a little bit of like garlic butter on it and some cheese and toasting it in the oven if I'm making like pasta for dinner. So there are so many different ways to like eat and use the sourdough bread. All right guys, I can't wait any longer. Let's cut into it. Literally, oh my gosh, this one is so freaking good. Yum, 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 yum. Like I said, I am cutting into this a little bit early, but that's okay. Cutting my sourdough, I like to just go straight down the middle and then I will like put it on its side and then cut into little like sandwich slices of size. Ooh, look at that crumb. Yeah, that's still a little too hot. I shouldn't have cut into it, but I cannot wait. I cannot wait. This looks so good. A lot of people will like critique their sourdough by like how many bubbles there are. If there's like super big holes, that means like you let it proof for a little too long. But you guys, that's perfect. Look at that. Yes, please. I'm gonna leave this half here for me and Dallin. I'm gonna let it cool a little bit more. I'm gonna bring a quarter to my sister-in-law and then I'm going to eat this on my drive. The whole freaking quarter. Yes, please. So I'm obviously in a rush and I would not recommend putting this in a baggie. So I'm not gonna close it so it can still escape the air. Here's my little piece we're going to taste test. Amaze. I forgot how fun sourdough baking was. I think I just got overwhelmed because I would always make 2 loaves and then we wouldn't eat it all. And then I was always trying to feed my starter. I really should just stick to like 1 a week and then put it in the fridge. All right, we did some butter, some honey. Taste test, baby. So good. So freaking good. Are you kidding? I'm sad I haven't been doing this in a while. It's been like 3 or 4 months. Ooh. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed the process. I'm not sure how many of you care to see sourdough videos, but it's like all over my For You page. I watch it through every single time. And hopefully this helped. Maybe you were intimidated by it. Really, it is simple. You just have to get the times right. So just see what works for your day and figure it out, and you'll have fresh sourdough in a few days. So freaking good. See you guys in next week's video.